Let's bring in Ben Shapiro. He's the editor-in-chief of the Daily Wire, syndicated columnist, host of the Ben Shapiro Show. Joins us from, where are you today? Out west?
Tennessee, actually.
Okay. Well, that's west of where we are. Ben, let's talk a little bit about the President of the United States. He was talking the other day in the Rose Garden about whether or not he had called the family members of the 4 service personnel killed in the country of Niger a few weeks ago. And then he mentioned that President Obama didn't call everybody, and that caused a big media firestorm. Now there's a story that apparently he did call one of the widows of U.S. Army Sergeant LaDavid Johnson a couple of days ago. And Congresswoman from Florida, Frederica Wilson, a Democrat, was infuriated that the president was so insensitive because reportedly the president said the soldier, you know, your husband, knew what he signed up for, but I guess it still hurts. What's your observation about what's going on with this? Because suddenly a phone call from the commander-in-chief to a grieving family looks like it has been politicized.
Well, I mean, here's the big problem, is that the only accounts of the phone call that we have so far is actually from Frederica Wilson. And this Democratic congressperson was calling for Trump's impeachment back in May. So the media immediately picked up on her accounts of the conversation. She was apparently in the car and heard the conversation on speakerphone. But we haven't heard anything from the widow of the service member. We haven't heard President Trump's version. We haven't heard the transcript. We haven't heard tapes. We haven't heard anything except for a Democrat who has some political motivations here, particularly in the 48 hours after Trump suggested that President Obama didn't call all of the families of troops, and somehow that was a shortcoming. So it's a little bit convenient that this story pops up now. Right. That's not to say that he didn't say these things, but I would like to see some evidence before the media immediately jump to the conclusion that fulfills all of the things they want it to fulfill.
Yeah, let's book a 9-person panel and debate what a bad person the president is. This woman makes Maxine Waters seem like a supporter of Donald Trump. Some of the headlines in the past: Miami correspondent to Donald Trump, please do not, Congresswoman to Donald Trump, stop tweeting. She calls for his impeachment. She also says he is desperate for attention and needs psychological help. This was leading up to the fact that she witnessed on speakerphone the portion of a conversation regarding the family of a slain soldier. I believe she's got an axe to grind. Maybe she's 100% right, but the background makes you at least be skeptical if you're questioning, all right?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're going to be in a he said, she said situation, then you have to wonder about the credibility of the various characters. And this is why I'm saying anyone of fair mind should at this point be saying, OK, let's see some actual evidence of the conversation, transcript, tape. How about the widow herself testifying as to what exactly happened in this conversation? Because even in Wilson's recounting of the conversation, there's some ellipses that do some pretty heavy lifting. She says basically that Trump said, you know, he knew what he signed up for, but I guess it still feels bad. But there's an ellipses between he knew what he signed up for, but I guess it still feels bad.
Hey.
The ellipses there could be something like, as you said, right? The ellipses could be something like a response directly to the widows and something the widow said. So we just don't know.
Ben, we put up the picture of this guy. He's very young. He leaves behind a wife. I don't know if he has kids. He probably leaves behind parents. Here's his picture. Look how young he is. Look how handsome he is. He died for our country. And we're talking about this? Can we not talk about the service and the sacrifice that this man made?
Well, again, I think that, you know, if the conversation went exactly as Wilson said, that would be somewhat troubling, because I don't think the president should really be saying that sort of thing. But I don't think that we have the evidence to suggest that. And obviously, I think everyone is devastated about the loss of Sergeant Johnson. The idea that President Trump is sitting in the White House and he really doesn't care what happened to Sergeant Johnson, that seems to me a very convenient political narrative, as I say, arising 48 hours after Trump seemingly suggested something like that about President Obama.
Yeah, we don't know
Bush.
the conversation, but do you really think the president would call up the widow and say, and preach that narrative instead of saying, I'm sorry?
Well, the thing, and to your earlier point where, you know, we haven't heard from the family per se, but we did hear from the president earlier, and he said the tweet was, Democratic congressman totally fabricated what I said to the wife of a soldier who died in action, and I have proof. So the big question is, will he reveal, and then he writes sad, will he reveal that proof? Will we hear from the family? These are normal conversations between a commander-in-chief and a grieving family we never, ever hear about until today.
All right, let's change gears and talk about Hillary Clinton, who, by the way, is in South Korea, saying the president is causing war with North Korea. Totally irresponsible. She also made clear she doesn't want to run against the president again, but she'll continue to harass him and continue to criticize him. And now we find out the Clinton Foundation has its link with the Russians. They're revealed to have routed millions of dollars to Hillary Clinton's, while she was Secretary of State to the Clinton Foundation. And next thing you know, she ends up Russia ends up with a lot of our uranium. Any coincidence there?
Well, I mean, Peter Schweitzer detailed this during the campaign, and it was a major scandal. It was something that President Trump brought up on the campaign trail. But what we're finding out now is that the Obama Department of Justice knew full well that there was attempted corruption by the Russian government in these specific deals, and they did nothing about it. So you do have to wonder, why isn't Eric Holder being called before Congress right now? Why isn't he being called on by the new DOJ to answer some questions about why they didn't do anything, why they didn't even apparently let the State Department know if that's what happened? All of this is deeply suspicious. We already know that the Department of Justice under Loretta Lynch was making moves on behalf of Hillary Clinton. Was the Department of Justice on behalf of Hillary Clinton making moves under Eric Holder as well that would have protected some sort of cash pipeline between the Russians and the Clinton Foundation? Again, a lot of the documents that have been uncovered by the Hill are pretty disturbing from what the Hill reports. And the idea that the Obama administration was willing to greenlight this sort of activity, knowing full well that the Russians were attempting to infiltrate the supply of nuclear materials, is really disturbing stuff.
Absolutely. And the more they dig into the Russia thing, the more embarrassing it could be for the Obama administration. Ben, thank you very much for joining us today from Knoxville, Tennessee.
Thanks so much.
You bet.